Hello YouTube, today we're going to be talking about progressive overload. It's a concept that's vital to bodybuilding because without it, you can't progress. Every single YouTuber should be talking about progressive overload, and actually if they don't, it's a good sign that they're a hack because we all agree on one thing, and that is that if there is no progressive overload occurring, there will be no progression and no muscular gains. This is the basis of the concept. But after that, we have to discuss the methods. How exactly do you get that? And this is where the opinions tend to differ. I'm going to explain to you today what I perceive to be the best methods of progressive overload, and I'm going to point out the mistakes and the myths that surround the very concept, because I have found that too many people look at it as a black and white thing, and that defeats the entire purpose. It leads to people plateauing or getting hopeless because they get no gains, and it's all due to their misunderstanding of progressive overload, because in truth, no one understands progressive overload. Now, why do we want to achieve progressive overload in the first place? What is the goal? Well, the goal is simple. We want to provide the muscles with enough stress that they have to adapt, right? I'm not going to teach you that, you know how the game actually works. You have to actually trigger the muscle into growth. You have to stress it. You have to put it in situations where it has no choice, where the muscle fibers will be broken down and rebuilt stronger so that the muscle can actually survive the next training session. That is how it functions. But this also dictates that at some point, the muscle will get used to the work and the load that you offer it. And this is when the overload has to occur. You need to have more. You need to always give more, because if you don't, you won't be able to trigger super compensation. The recovery aspect will not occur because you failed to break down the muscle fibers, and therefore you will not get any gains. This is why we all seek to apply progressive overload. It's to challenge the muscle. And the perfect allegory and metaphor actually of this practice is Milo of Croton. It's the guy in the thumbnail. For the people who don't know, Milo of Croton was an old school, super old school strongman, meaning that he was someone who was widely considered to be one of the strongest person in the history of the human race. And he existed as sort of like a semi-historical figure, semi-mythological creature. We're not quite sure if he actually did the things that were said about him, but it doesn't really matter, because what interests us is the way he apparently built his body. Because either it's a myth or either it's real, it don't matter because the application still makes sense. And that was, for those who know, the method of carrying a calf up a hill every single day. And because the calf would grow, Milo would grow with it, because there would be progressive overloads. The weight he would carry up the hill every day would get more and more challenging, and his muscles would adapt, he would get bigger, etc. That is the tale, that is the myth of Milo of Croton. Now, the issue with that myth and with this allegorical representation of progressive overload is that it both shows you exactly what it's supposed to be, but it also shows you the inadequacies of such a method if we were to apply it in real life. Because of course, if you tried the same thing, you would quickly find out that it simply doesn't work. And this is when we have to start looking at progressive overload as something more complicated than just adding more weight on the bar, because that method is not only limited, it's also completely unrealistic. You are not a strongman from ancient Greece or ancient Rome. You are a human from the modern age, and your body simply doesn't have the ability to handle that type of overload. So we have to think about it in different terms, because since our bodies will require higher and higher loads to be able to produce higher and higher levels of supercompensation, we need to have the ability to find something that differs from just picking up something that's heavier every single day. So since it's going to require the ability to complexify the issue a bit, I want you to start thinking of progressive overload as something that occurs both on the axis of weight and time, because time is also incredibly important. Actually, even in the story of Milo, it's important, because if you remember, he carried the calf up the hill every day. So there is a frequency aspect in it that too many people misunderstand or just forget altogether. They think that's not important. Actually, the time component is just as important as the weight component because your progression occurs over time. So keep that in mind, because when you look at the concept of diminishing return, this is when it makes the most sense. If you don't look at time, you won't understand it. What is diminishing return? Diminishing return is the death of progressive overload. It's what many people point to explain why overload eventually starts to fail. It's because you are going to reach a point where the amount of work you have to put in will simply not be enough anymore, where the amount of effort you had to put in the past were just minimal and you got maximal gains from it. Well, sadly, at some point, that starts to reverse. It used to be that you would put in this much effort and you would get that much gains, and now it's the opposite. This started to go higher and higher and higher, more and more and more work, and the gains you got from it got lower and lower and lower. That is the concept of diminishing return. That is when progressive overload stops being your friend and it becomes your worst enemy, because there used to be a time where weight on the bar would go up and up and up, and now it either stagnates or it regresses, and it kills your mood, it kills your vibe. I also want to offer methods for you to understand that the reason why your progressive overload tactics are not working is because they were too simplistic in the first place. It's not that your body cannot adapt anymore, it's that the method that you apply is not adaptable, and this is where the difference lays, because progression will always slow. But if you are intelligent and you think about the overload practices, it will never actually stop. Because we both know that if you don't overload properly, you won't progress. And that is sort of the crux of the issue. It doesn't mean that progress is not possible. It's that progress is impossible if the overload is not done properly. For many reasons. You have your recovery you have to keep in mind. You have your work capacity that also plays a role. It works on many different facets. It's multifaceted. It's not as easy again as just getting stronger or just putting more weight on the bar. That is a mythological approach to muscle building that sounds really good on paper. Again, it's great to read in the books, but we all know that in practice, this simply doesn't function. Now, looking at progressive overload, there is something very important to say, something that I see more and more people bring up, and I think it's great because it's reshaping the way we approach the practice. I'm sure that many of you are going to think that you progressively overload to gain muscle and that it's a carryover that's from left to right and that's it. The issue is that, again, it's limited because that's not the truth. The truth is that it goes both ways. It's vice versa. You overload to be able to gain muscle, but the practice of gaining muscle will also result in more overload. So it's the snake that bites its own tail, and that cycle has been pointed out by many people. Now, I like it, right? You know me, that type of philosophical take. I always have a certain appetence for that type of ideas. My problem with it is that I'm already seeing problems with people who hear that and think, okay, this means that progressive overload is not that important, because they hear again that gaining muscle or building muscle will cause progressive overload and not the other way around. That's a misapplication, right? It's a simplification that leads to falsification in a sense, because that's not true. Again, it's vice versa. It's the two things. How did you gain muscle in the first place? You progressively overload. So the two are connected. It's impossible to just look at one and create a relationship with the other that is just one-sided. It's too simplistic, and noobs and novices in general have a taste for that type of things, that type of ideas, but it leads to problem, because if you start to believe that progressive overload will just occur because you'll gain muscle, so you will necessarily overload, well, yes, but you're missing step one, and step one is a proper overload in the first place that then causes muscle gains, that then allows the practice of overload to continue. So it's always important to keep these factors in mind. It's a chicken-egg allegory all over again. In this case, don't over-focus on one or the other. Keep them in mind as a globality, but understand that in this scenario, the egg is progressive overload. This is what occurs first, not muscle growth. And that repetition, that order of things needs to be understood, because a cycle has a step 1, step 2, a plan A, plan B. It rotates, yes, but one starts and therefore one triggers the other. Now, this means, if we're going to put it in simplest terms, that progressive overload is both the cause and the symptom of muscle growth. That's easier to understand that way. What causes muscle growth? Well, it's progressive overload. And what does muscle growth create? Well, more progressive overload. So it's also a symptom. It's one and the other. It's great, again, that we have a more complex approach to the concept as a whole in YouTube Fitness. I appreciate it, but that type of big brain take can and will lead to people over-complexifying the issue when it's really not that hard to get, all right? So this is something I wanted to make clear. I don't want you guys to run with the idea that progressive overload will just occur, so just get muscles or get bigger, bro. Yeah, that's, if it were as easy as just getting bigger, no one would bother programming, no one would actually make videos like the one I'm making right now on progressive overload. The fact that YouTube Fitness as a whole has an obsession with progressive overload shows that the concept is absolutely vital. It's not just something we invented to make videos about for clicks. It's something that occurs in nature. You need more and more work to trigger a stimulus in the muscle. Every living creature has to go through that. We're the only ones that actually want to do it for sport or for fun. So we have come up with concepts. And that also means, by the way, that if the concept is so complex, if it applies to something as, again, logistically deep or intricate as the human body and the skeletal muscle system, it cannot be as simple as simply putting weight on the bar. That is the second thing I want to make clear. I hear too many people say that progressive overload is key or it's vital, and I agree with them up to the point where they say that the only way to overload is weight on the bar. And I've even saw these people starting to make the point or the case that anyone who doesn't preach progressive overload in that simplistic fashion either doesn't understand overload or that they don't believe in it. But this is just one aspect of overload. It's one way to overload. Again, we're sort of going back into the whole deload discussion. I won't cover it again, but understand that it's the same thing. A lot of people think that the only way to deload is to take a week off. That's one method of deloading, because what do deloads do? They allow for recovery. It's the same for progressive overload. What does progressive overload do? It allows for stress to be directed towards the muscles with greater and greater intensity, so that the threshold raises and the muscle has to adapt and supercompensate. Weight on the bar is one method of accomplishing that. It's not the end all be all. And actually, and I'm going to prove it to you, it's not even the best method, right? I'm not saying that it's bad. It's actually key to the entire principle and concepts. But as a standalone idea, if you just look at progressive overload as more weight on the bar, you're going to quickly run into problems because you are trying to be Milo of Croton. The issue is you're not that guy. You're just a random, which there's no problem with. I'm a random as well. But these methods don't work because they are too simplistic again. It works for noobs. It's the reason why so many people who only make videos for noobs push progressive overload as just more weight on the bar. But if you're someone who actually wants to go above the newbie phase, who wants to actually make serious gains and get a good physique, you're going to have to go beyond that. And actually, a way for me to determine if someone is intermediate or not, or if they're still a noob, is if they have the ability to go beyond that. Meaning that once you have the ability to overload differently than just weight on the bar, in my opinion, you're intermediate because you graduated from the simplistic programs of YouTube Fitness. And actually, it's the reason why so many people get killed by the intermediate phase, or they just cannot take the transition. It's because they transition from a very black and white way of overload to one more complex, and it kills them. You hear them a lot say, oh, it's intermediate programs have so much more volume. That's not necessarily the case. It's not that they have more volume. It's that they introduce volume as a variable of overload, where in the past, the only actual variable was intensity and more weight on the bar. And this is when they just lose their footing and are not able to progress or they burn out. It's because the practice they espoused in the past was just too black and white, too rigid, and the second they got flexibility, they got lost in the sauce. But that is a misunderstanding of progressive overload in the first place. So this is why it has to be corrected. It's only one method. Weight on the bar is one method. Yes, it's effective, but it's not the only one that exists, and it's certainly not the one that is going to lead you to a good physique. The way I think about genetic potential is how far and how long can you progress on a simplistic progressive overload method. I know people who, within 6 or 7 months of just weight on the bar, stall, plateau, and never progress past it. It's not because they have shit genetics, it's because they have average genetics. Most people are going to experience that. The freaks of nature are the one who can keep progressing. I knew a guy who for 3 years straight made gains in the gym just by doing that. He would come in with the same rep ranges, the same frequency, the same exercises, and just slap weight on the bar and do that. And he got to insane numbers in strength with just that method. That's a genetic freak. But we cannot program within mind the outliers. So it's the reason why I push the idea that for people intermediate and beyond, and even noobs, it is always important and key to look at the other methods of progressive overload, because these are the ones that will get you far. And we're going to go back to the image and the allegory of Milo of Croton, if you will, because I think it's very important, and it opens up again the possibility to look at overload with a different lens. Because a lot of people who only put weight on the bar end up being Milos of Croton, but at the end of the day, they don't get anywhere. And that's what I call the Milo Paradox. It's the idea and it's a fact that progressive overload on paper should be easy. It should be as easy as just putting weight on the bar. But when you try to actually apply this in practice, it doesn't work. And it's something I'm sure you've heard people say. People will say, oh, if we could just progressively overload forever, we would all be benching 5,000 pounds. That is true. If you could make the same amount of gains you made when you were a noob the first 6 months, and you extended that for the rest of your career, you would be lifting tons. Like you would be lifting actual tons in the gym. But we know it doesn't work like that. Why? Because diminishing returns also stipulate diminishing progress. At some point, it slows down exponentially. And what used to be 20 pounds on the bench is now 5 pounds, and it turns to 2, etc., etc. That is not a reason to say that progressive overload doesn't work or that it stops working. That's bullshit. What stops working is the simplistic method. That's what creates the great plateau, what I call the great plateau, where people get to a point where they just can't put more weight on the bar. Their body just simply doesn't respond to that anymore. And that's perfectly normal. It's because the Milo of Croton method is a myth. It's something that only works, again, in the allegorical realm. The human body cannot adapt as fast because your ability to put weight on the bar is always going to exceed the ability of the muscle to recover from said load. It's always going to be the same. No human on earth can actually bypass this biological limitation. So this means that at some point, if you just go the Milo route, you enter the Milo paradox, and that is a simple mathematical impossibility. It's the simple impossibility of the muscle, again, to handle your jumps in weight. And that leads to plateaus, by the way. 100% of plateaus are caused by this. Most novices and intermediates that plateau, they plateau because of the Milo paradox. It's not really that they can't adapt anymore. It's that, again, the methods that they apply to progressively overload and force adaptation don't have the ability to do it. They don't offer that option anymore. And this is when progress stalls. And of course, we never want progress to stall. We can allow progress to slow down. We can artificially stop it for certain muscle groups. But if it stops altogether and we don't have a choice and a say, this is a sign that the program is poorly crafted. It's a sign that the method of overload we're using is simply not functioning anymore. It should be a wake-up call. But I have scarcely heard anyone actually point out the fact that all of these novice programs that have you plateau at some point are designed to make you plateau. They are programmed in a fashion that will force a plateau. A plateau is not obligatory. And the way to avoid said plateaus and to continuously progress is to simply find different modes. Because keep in mind that what Milo of Croton did was just one type of progressive overload, one type. There are a ton of other types. And if we again look at the guy and what he did with the calf, even by just taking that same context and do same implements, we can come up with different methods. For example, he could have carried up a different sized calf. He doesn't have to carry the same one every single day. What if he had 5? He could vary the weights and therefore he could vary the amount of stress he puts on the muscle. That would have been one method. He could also vary the days. Why carry the calf up every day? And why the same calf every day? Why not Tuesday one and Wednesday a different one? Why not take the Thursday off and then carry calf number 1 and calf number 4 on Thursday? All of these would also be valid methods. He could carry them with different techniques. He could do a Zercher carry with a calf. He could have it on his back, on one shoulder. He could actually grab it like a luggage. All of these vary. He could also do it several times. And I think this is the most important one and the one that people are going to look at and think at first when they think about variations. Why not take the calf and pick it up the hill and then bring it back and do it again? Maybe you could keep the calf at the same weight, but just do more reps with the calf, and that will also create progressive overload. You could vary the terrain, you could carry the calf halfway. All of these to say one thing and one thing only. Looking at the genesis and the myth that we use to exemplify progressive overload, even in that rigid setting, we can still come up with better methods than just carrying up a calf that somehow grew during the night. Keep in mind that the reason why the myth is interesting to look at is because Milo was not the one to decide the growth of the calf. And I think that this speaks to the helplessness involved, because if you're not a demigod, that type of completely uncontrolled weight and load management just cannot function. It just cannot work. But the sad thing is that many novice programs replicate that, or they force you to put weight on the bar and you're not in control anymore. So you're the guy who has to carry the calf, knowing full well that you might not be able to, or it's going to kill your recovery, or you won't make progress from it. This is when we apply different methods. I understand that the most sexy and the most appealing method is always going to be weight on the bar. Why? Bigger number, right? We're human beings. We're not really complicated creatures at all. We like bigger because bigger equals better. We like a bigger bench. We like a bigger squat. All of that is just a natural instinct. The issue is that we have to fight that instinct, because that instinct always pushes us towards one type of progressive overload that strokes our ego, but that leads us completely oblivious to all of the other methods. Because most of what I cited to you right now are better methods of progressive overload, but I'm going to get back to that. Imagine if Milo of Croton tried to progressively overload while doing the same thing every day, where every day he shows up, he tries to carry the calf. If he were a real human, at some point this would stop working. So then, what is the most logical step? The most logical next step would be to find different methods to trigger a similar type of overload, of stress in the muscle, to create a reaction, an adaptation. So, instead of just giving up, or instead of just heartlessly, continuously trying to carry the calf up the hill, even if he falls, even if he can't, even if he gets hurt, what Milo would have done is he would have done more reps with a smaller calf. He would have found variations and ways to carry the calf up the hill to create an adaptation. Does that mean that he would never actually pick up a bigger calf? No, but he would use different methods. He wouldn't just obsess over one, and that's typically the reason why this allegory is so important, because it teaches us that weight on the bar is a valid method, but that by itself it has its limits. So if you're the type of person that loves to put more weight on the bar, actually being able to progressively overload with different methods is the best way to be able in the future to continue putting weight on the bar. I hope that is clear. It's the reason why myself, I like to put novices on the type of programs that also include the ability to manipulate volume, reps and sets, and not just put weight on the bar all the time, because I believe that it teaches them how to allow themselves to, in the future, still add weight, still add more load, so that they never plateau and they never end up in a situation where they have one method and that method simply doesn't work. Since you are a human and not a demigod, there will come a day for you as well when weight on the bar simply stops working. And on that day, if you think that this was actually the only way to overload, you're going to be in a pickle because you will be out of methods to actually stress the muscle. So you will stall, you will regress, or you will quit the sport altogether. To avoid that, you need to start embracing different type of progressive overloads before the main method stalls, before it actually betrays you. That way, this one will remain valid, you can still put weight on the bar, and the other methods will also be there so that this keeps happening. The cycle can continue, both types of overload can feed each other, because at the end of the day, keep in mind one thing, weight on the bar is best utilized with volume and intensity manipulation. By itself, it is a subpar method of progressive overload because it is designed to fail. What I want you to keep in mind is that I am not advocating against hyping up the load. I'm not telling you to not touch the weight on the bar. What I'm saying, however, is that there needs to be a strong distinction between automatic versus conscious increments. Automatic is what Milo went through. The calf gets bigger, you fucking pick it up and you walk up the hill. That's it, you don't have a choice. A conscious increment is you deciding that this is now the right time to put weight on the bar. If you're someone who does evolving rep ranges, you have faced that dilemma because there's not really a set number of reps where you have to go up in weight in evolving rep ranges. There exist some numbers where it makes the most sense, but it's not like a 5x5. 5x5 says, okay, you hit 5x5, go up in weight and do it again. A 5x2 to 5 won't work like that because it's going to be up to your own appreciation. It's the reason why I love that practice so much. Now you are not forced to go up in weight. You have to make a conscious choice. Does it make sense in that context? Am I going to be able to recuperate? Where is my volume at? All of these are things that need to be taken into account. As I said, Milo couldn't choose, right? Because the calf just got bigger automatically. But the same is not true for you. So don't treat a barbell as if it were a calf. Don't treat the barbell as if it were just a being that constantly grows and it's out of control and you don't have a choice. You have to be in control of the overload. This is the end-all be-all of the practice, to be honest. Too many people are victims of progressive overload. Like it happens to them. They don't have a choice. And you hear them say stuff like, oh, well, the program dictates. The program is a piece of paper, right? It's something that dictates the way you train, but you're the one who should have come up with the training program in the first place. I know that many of you don't do that. I keep telling you to do it because it allows you to avoid stuff like this. That way you don't feel like you're shackled to your program and a slave to it that has to go up in weight because that's what the program says. These are poor practices. You need to be the master of overload. And of course, there is a biological component to it, right? I'm not telling you that if you become the master of overload, you will decide when you can go up in weight and you will somehow shape the muscle and gain strength like this. No. What I'm saying, however, is that once you espouse that type of mindset, you will find that your ability to progress will be much more correlated with your ability to program, and it's not going to be up to chance anymore because you will program within mind the fact that you want to be able to overload and put weight on the bar, but you want to do it at your own volition, and that is truly what makes most of the difference. It also makes a difference in terms of psychology because that method prevents plateaus. I've been preaching that in the past. Plateaus are self-created. Your program created the plateau. Okay, it's not nature that decided to just fuck you over. In the tale of Milo of Croton, nature was on his side because he could continuously progress. But for you, you have to take into account nature, all right? If you get punished by a plateau, it's because you have done something that didn't allow your muscles to adapt. So you, in a sense, misinterpreted nature. I'm going to go into that tangent because it's fun. Understand that what defines a god is the ability of the god to either control nature or bypass its laws altogether. Demigods are sort of the same. Milo of Croton is a good allegory of someone who didn't have to take a look at nature. Nature adapted after him. We are not like that. We have to look at what biologically makes sense for us, and we have to program around that, not the other way around. Progressive overload of just putting weight on the bar and doing that until the cows come home is typically the type of programming that refuses to look at nature and that thinks that nature will just adapt. Well, it doesn't work like that. You adapt to nature, not the other way around. So keep that in mind. And also, and I think it's the most important thing, if you espouse proper progressive overload, you will stop thinking about natural limits because you'll realize that they don't exist. Again, the idea of nature, a natural limit, as if nature had decided that you can't put weight on anymore or you can't gain muscle anymore. That's nonsense. The natural limit needs to be renamed. We need to name it for what it is. We need to start calling it the programming limit or the intellect limit, whatever you want, the artificial limit, because all of that at the end of the day is self-created. You create your plateaus and you create your limits. And it's something you see a ton with people who gave up on lifting because they tell you, well, progressive overload didn't work. Well, yeah, one type of progressive overload, your ability to slap plates on the bar, that stopped. What about the ability to multiply the reps, multiply the sets, play with the frequency, do undulating loads? All of that is valid and, again, more important at some point than the ability to put weight on the bar. But if you ignore all of that, you're going to think that your body actually reached a limit when it hasn't. And that's my issue also with that type of overload. It fails to promote the most important aspect of a program, which is flexibility. If the only way you can progress is run at a wall really fast and hope that the wall breaks, guess what? You are going to quit eventually. Whereas if you had promoted practices that allow flexibility to occur, you would climb the wall, you would go around the wall, you would dig underneath the wall. These are all types of overload that make more sense than, again, just weight on the bar. I think I have a video about it. I will put it in the description for people who are interested, but it's something I want you to keep in mind. Of course, as I said, load increment is still key because it allows you to continuously challenge the muscles and promote intensity. And that's something I have to put front and forth because I know many people are going to hear me say it and think, okay, he thinks that weight on the bar is not a good way to progressively overload. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you only do that, then it's limited. In a sense, you're taking a practice that's valid, but because you are just dead set on doing only that, you're making it completely worthless because after a while, it stops working. So what I'm saying is, yes, do use that, do put weight on the bar, but do it for the right reasons. You want to do it, again, to promote intensity, to challenge the muscles. You want to do it to lower junk volume so that you are always able to work closer to failure. You want to do it so that you can hit baseline faster. Again, that question of the time that comes back. Why is it a problem for us to face diminishing returns? Well, it's because we only have so many hours to put in the gym. I don't want to have to train 4 hours to hit my baseline and actually challenge the muscle and make it grow. So I'm going to get intense work done. I'm going to do sets close to failure that are going to allow the muscle to be ideally stimulated. But the only way to do that is weight on the bar. Because if I stay at the same weight all the time, this would never happen. And it's something I warn you against. Because I know many people like this, especially bodybuilders, who understand what I say so that progressive overload with just weight on the bar doesn't work at some point. You have to actually diversify. But instead of diversifying, what they did is they went for the other stuff and they ignored that type of overload altogether. And that creates monstrosities. For example, I knew people who got to 225 on the bench, plateaued and said, okay, you know what? What I'm going to do is no more weight on the bar. I'm just going to do more sets and reps of 225. But at some point, this stops working as well because you're not challenging the muscle. The weight is too easy. You can repeat it as many times as you want. Yes, you accumulate tonnage, but it's low quality tonnage. So it's a malpractice again. Never regard programming things and concepts as black and white. It's not either all good or all bad. It's in between, and it's that in between that I want you to hit. Because it is true that more weight on the bar is a valid tool, but it's valid as long as the other types of overload work. Meaning that, in my opinion, if we want to apply proper progressive overload for bodybuilding, weight on the bar needs to be something put at the service of every other type of overload and not the other way around. But saying that, in reality doesn't matter because we're going back to the chicken and egg thing. Why does it matter if one type of overload is at the service of the other or not? At the end of the day, they both occur in a cycle. So to go back to the problem I was seeing with people who are trying to relativize progressive overload, why does it matter if progressive overload causes muscles or if muscle gain causes progressive overload? At the end of the day, it's the same thing. It just means one thing, that one needs to occur first and that they both need to occur at the same time to be able to continuously progress. It's the same for what I just presented. Weight on the bar and the ability to multiply the reps and the sets, to do your variations, your rotations, these two need to come hand in hand. They need to grow together because they are both causes and symptoms of one another. You put more weight on the bar, so you have the ability to multiply the reps. You're going to be able to do more reps to get more sets done. It's going to grow your work capacity, which in return at some point you're going to be able to go up in weight, which then allows you to do more volume, etc., etc. It is a virtuous circle, one that must never be broken. Now, if we are, for this conclusion, to go back and take one last look at Milo, this method I just presented is, imagine if Milo could control the calf's growth and he used it to support the other modes instead of making it a priority, meaning that now he's in control of the weight the calf gains every single day, and he doesn't just pick it up for one go and then go back down. No, he maybe does it 2 times one day, then he takes a different calf, or maybe he takes the same calf and he shrinks it, and he does it for a different mode, for a different amount of reps. All of that is what we are supposed to do, because keep in mind that the calf in this case is a barbell. You decide the weight of the barbell. You decide the reps and sets. You are not a victim to progressive overload. You are the one who designs it. Again, progressive overload, and it's the reason why I said that, I'm repeating myself, but it's incredibly important, that it's dangerous to just say that progressive overload is a byproduct, is because it teaches people that it's something that just happens. No, you need to strategize progressive overload. It's incredibly important. So that's the way to strategize it. You have to have your priorities straight, because for the method to work, you are going to have to, one, control the growth of the calf, that is incredibly important, and two, to be able to use that calf for different methods in different fashions so as to promote progression and constant growth. If you fail to do one or the other, you are going to stall, you are going to plateau. So this is why it's so important to understand what progressive overload is in the first place, and then to use that understanding to apply it in your program properly. I hope this was clear, informative, and concise, and I'll see you next time.